Archaeologists dedicate their lives to uncovering the past, but sometimes they unearth more than just history. They find human remains that tell a truly terrifying story. These are not peaceful burials. They are mummies with faces frozen in a scream, bodies showing clear evidence of a violent end, or individuals buried in ways that suggest extreme fear and superstition from their own cultures. The scientists who discover these remains are often left shaken, confronted with the dark and brutal side of ancient life. These finds challenge our understanding of history and reveal deeply disturbing practices. Here are 10 mummy discoveries that genuinely scared the archaeologists who brought them back into the light. In 1935, near the ancient Egyptian city of Luxor, a team of archaeologists opened a tomb. Inside, they found a mummy that made them stop in their tracks. It was a woman, but her face was not peaceful. Her mouth was wide open, her head thrown back, her face locked in an expression of pure agony. They called her the Screaming Woman. Usually, ancient Egyptian embalmers took great care to make the dead look calm before their journey into the afterlife. They would often tie the jaw shut to keep the mouth closed, but something went terribly wrong here. This woman was clearly a person of high status. She was buried with expensive imported materials like juniper resin and wore a beautiful, complex wig. She had gold and silver rings on her fingers. Someone had spent a lot of money on her burial. So why did she look like this? Modern science gave us a terrifying answer. CT scans show that her organs were still inside her body, which was very unusual for that time. The scans also revealed what likely happened in her final moments. She may have suffered from something called a cadaveric spasm. This is a rare and immediate stiffening of the muscles that happens at the moment of a very painful or stressful death. Her final moments were so filled with agony that her body locked itself into a scream. The spasm was so strong that even the embalmers could not close her mouth. Her pain was etched onto her face for eternity. But what if a scream wasn't an accident of death, but a deliberate punishment? Not far from where the Screaming Woman was found, another mummy was discovered with a similar look of horror. He is known as Unknown Man E. His face is also twisted, his mouth open as if in a terrible cry. For years, no one knew who he was, but DNA testing revealed a shocking secret. He was the son of a powerful pharaoh, Ramesses III. His name was likely Prince Pentuer. Ancient papers tell a dark story about this prince. His mother, a wife of the pharaoh named T, hatched a plot to kill Ramesses III so her son Pentuer could take the throne. But the plot was discovered. Pentuer was put on trial and found guilty. He was forced to take his own life. His burial was the final punishment. Unlike the Screaming Woman, who was buried with care, Pentuer's mummification was meant to be an insult. His organs were left inside of him, and he was not properly embalmed. Worst of all, he was wrapped in a sheepskin. To the ancient Egyptians, sheepskin was ritually impure and would deny him a proper afterlife. His open mouth and agonized expression were likely left that way on purpose. It was a message meant to immortalize his scream of pain for all time as a punishment for his crime. In a final chilling twist, his mummy was placed in the same hidden tomb as the father he tried to murder. A punishment for eternity sounds like a curse, but sometimes a curse is not something you are buried with. It is something you unleash when you are disturbed. In 1993, in the remote Altai mountains of Siberia, archaeologists found a 2,500-year-old mummy perfectly preserved in ice. She became known as the Yukok Princess. She was a woman of high status, maybe a shaman or a storyteller. Her skin was covered in beautiful detailed tattoos of mythical creatures. She was buried with 6 horses, ready for her journey to the next world, and even had a small container of cannabis with her. But when the scientists removed her from her icy tomb, strange and terrible things began to happen. The local people of the Altai region had warned them. They believe the Ice Maiden is a sacred ancestor, a guardian who keeps evil from entering the world. They said that disturbing her would have dire consequences. Soon after she was removed, a series of disasters struck the region. There were earthquakes, forest fires, strange illnesses, and suicides. The very helicopter that carried her body away from the mountain almost crashed in a sudden storm. For the scientists, this was a priceless discovery. For the local people, it was a sacrilege that unleashed a curse that they believe is still active today. While the Yukok princess was buried with honor, some frozen tombs hide a much colder truth. High in the Andes Mountains, on the peak of the Juliaco volcano, archaeologists in 1999 found 3 of the best preserved mummies ever discovered. They were not kings or queens, they were 3 children. A 13-year-old girl, now called the Maiden, a 7-year-old boy, and a 6-year-old girl. They looked like they were only sleeping, their bodies perfectly frozen in the thin, cold air. But they were not sleeping. They were victims of a terrifying Inca ritual called capacocha, a child sacrifice. The archaeologists who found them were horrified not by violence, but by how calm and methodical it all was. The children were chosen for their beauty and perfection from all across the Inca Empire. For months before their deaths, they were treated like gods, a diet much richer than what they were used to. Then, in their final weeks, they were given large amounts of cocoa leaves and a corn beer called chicha to put them into a deep sleep. They were carried to the freezing top of the mountain, where they were gently placed in a small underground tomb and left to die from the cold. It was considered a great honor for their families, but for the children, it was a calm, quiet, and terrifying end. These children looked like they were sleeping, and that peaceful look can be the most terrifying thing of all. It can hide a terrible secret. In 1950, in a peat bog in Denmark, 2 brothers cutting peat for fuel found a body. It was so well preserved that they called the police, thinking they had found a recent murder victim. But the man, who became known as the Talland Man, had died over 2,000 years ago. His face was incredibly serene. His eyes and mouth were gently closed. You could even see the short stubble on his chin. He looked like he was dreaming, but around his neck was a leather noose pulled tight. An autopsy showed he had died by hanging. His body had been carefully placed in the bog, arranged in a sleeping position. His last meal was a simple porridge of barley and seeds. The archaeologists were faced with a chilling puzzle. Why was a man who was killed so violently laid to rest with such care, his face composed into an image of perfect peace? It is a quiet horror that asks more questions than it answers. Talland Man's death was violent, but another man found in a bog in England suffered something far worse. In 1984, in Lindau Moss, another perfectly preserved body was found. He was named Lindau Man. In life, he was well cared for, with trimmed hair and manicured fingernails, but his death was a storm of brutality. Scientists pieced together his final terrifying moments. First, he was hit on the head twice with a heavy, blunt object, hard enough to break his skull. Then a cord made of animal sinew was tightened around his neck, strangling him and breaking his neck bones. Finally, as if that was not enough, his throat was cut with a sharp blade. Experts called this a triple death, an example of ritual overkill so extreme it could not have been a simple murder. The scare for archaeologists was trying to understand the kind of ritual that would demand such a complex and gruesome end. But as terrifying as a ritual death is, there is another even older fear. The fear of not being dead at all. In Guanajuato, Mexico, a cholera outbreak in 1833 forced people to bury the dead very quickly. Decades later, the town started charging a burial tax. If a family could not pay, their loved one was dug up. What the gravediggers found was shocking. The bodies had not turned to skeletons. The dry, mineral-rich soil had naturally mummified them. Many of these mummies were found with their mouths wide open, their faces twisted in horror. A terrifying legend was born. In the panic of the epidemic, some people were buried alive by mistake. The most famous story is of a woman named Ignacia Aguilar. She had a strange illness that sometimes made her heart seem to stop. Her family, thinking she had died, buried her. When her body was later exhumed, she was found face down in her coffin. She had bitten her own arm, and her hands were scratched from trying to claw her way out. It's a primal fear that the Guanajuato mummies bring to life. The mummies of Guanajuato look terrifying, but in a crypt in Sicily, there is a mummy so lifelike, she is known as Sleeping Beauty. In the Capuchin catacombs of Palermo, thousands of mummified bodies line the wall, but one stands out. Her name is Rosalia Lombardo. She was a little girl who died in 1920, just before her second birthday. Her heartbroken father hired a famous embalmer named Alfredo Salafia to preserve her forever. He did his job too well. Rosalia looks like she is just sleeping in her little glass coffin. Her blonde hair is tied with a silk bow, and her skin is still soft. The preservation is so perfect, it is unsettling. But the most chilling part is her eyes. For years, visitors have sworn that Rosalia opens and closes her eyes. Scientists say it is just a trick of the light filtering through the glass, but the effect is so real, it has scared people for generations. She is the mummy who seems to watch you back. Rosalia's preservation was the work of a modern master, but 2,100 years ago, someone in China created a mummy so perfect it defies all explanation. She is Xin Shui, also known as Lady Dai. When archaeologists opened her tomb in 1971, they could not believe what they saw. Her skin was still soft and moist, her hair was still in place, her arms and legs could still bend. This was a body that was over 2,000 years old, yet doctors were still able to perform a full autopsy. They found her blood type was A. They found her cause of death was a massive heart attack. They even found her last meal was still in her stomach, 138 melon seeds. She was buried in 4 nesting coffins, wrapped in 20 layers of silk, and soaked in a mysterious liquid that stopped all decay. Lady Dai is so perfectly preserved that she blurs the line between life and death. She is the mummy who, for 2 millennia, simply refused to die. For our final mummy, the scare did not come from the ancient world. It came from our own. In the year 2000, authorities in Pakistan announced a stunning discovery. They had found the mummy of a Persian princess dating back 2,600 years. She was found in a carved wooden coffin, wearing a golden crown and a breastplate that said she was the daughter of the great king Xerxes. This discovery could rewrite history. But as archaeologists looked closer, they got scared for a very different reason. The ancient writing had mistakes. There were pencil marks under the carvings on the coffin. The mat that she was lying on was only a few years old. The ancient princess was a modern fake, but the true horror was inside the wrappings. A CT scan revealed that the body was real, but it was not ancient. It was the body of a young woman, about 21 years old, who had died around 1996. Her neck had been broken. She was a murder victim. The archaeologists were not scared by a curse or an ancient ritual. They were scared because they had stumbled upon a recent crime, a modern murder hidden inside an ancient lie. If you were fascinated and terrified by these stories as we were, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the darkest corners of history. Let us know in the comments which mummy discovery you found the most unsettling. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new mystery.